Thank you. I noticed the tune was called Patricia. Makes for a nice song. Well, good morning. Welcome to Austin Bible Church. Good to have you with us today. I want to use this hour to report on my travels. It's always a useful thing to deliver a missionary report. Some Christians actually don't like them. They think it's a wasted hour. I should teach doctrine so they can grow. I said, well, we teach plenty of doctrine, and you should be growing. But missionary reports are biblical. And when you go to the book of Acts and you see the travels of the Apostle Paul, and when they completed each of their first 3 missionary journeys, they returned back to the church that had sent them and delivered a report. And it's an encouraging report. It's also an accountable report, since the sending organization that funds the thing kind of has a curiosity to make sure that those funds are redeemed and well spent, and that the Lord is honored in all that's doing. So I did not go to Portugal to hang out on the beach and goof off for 2 weeks. I did visit 5 beaches, and I did a little bit of goofing off. But you're going to see the actual fruitful ministry that took place, and I'm excited to share that with you. So let me open with prayer, and we'll dedicate our time for His good pleasure and glory. Shall we pray? Almighty Father, we come before you just so thankful. Thankful for grace and truth. Thankful for the blessings we have. Thankful for what you supply. Thankful for missionary travels and the great reminders and encouragements that we're not the only ones out there, Father, that there is fruit being born all over this world, and faithful brothers and sisters in places that we just aren't even aware of. So I thank you for opening our eyes, for expanding our awareness, for increasing our capacity to appreciate your faithfulness in all that you do. I thank you, Father, and I praise you in Jesus Christ's name. Amen. All right, well, if I seem a little out of practice, it's because I am. This is my first overseas travel since 2019. It's been a while. And even prior to that, I didn't really I went to Ukraine 9 times, and I didn't feel like you needed a report every single time. So after the first 1 or 2, I think I stopped giving Ukrainian reports. But I've been to the Philippines twice, I've been to Africa once, been to Ukraine 9 times, and now my first time ever to go to Portugal, and it was truly amazing. My invitation came because of Pastor Sergey, and we met Sergey a year ago when he attended the Schaefer Conference in Houston, and then came up here the following week and spent a week with us here at Austin Bible Church. He stayed with Adam and enjoyed that with Josiah and Adam. And so I got my invitation there, and Sergey, you might remember, is a war refugee, had to flee Ukraine when the war started, and is now a full-time resident in Portugal. And I don't know what his immigration status may end up being. Several of the Ukrainians that I met are now actually Portuguese citizens and intend to remain there long term. So that may be what Sergey and Olya end up doing. By the way, Sergey with the II, Sergey is the preferred pronunciation because that's the Ukrainian pronunciation. If I slip up and I call him Sergey, he will forgive me because he's a grace minister, but Sergey is the Russian pronunciation. And as you might imagine, the Ukrainians are not very fond of the Russians at this time because of the war, because of the violence, and because of everything that's happening. So they get to be very particular in how they pronounce things, and I will work to do that with the Sergey pronunciation. In addition to his invitation, a couple of other men that he introduced me to formed additional contacts. And on the left is Pastor Mark Loney and Mark's wife, Judith. And Mark is the senior pastor at the church there. And then on the right is Glenn Bowden. Glenn Bowden is a Dallas Theological Seminary graduate and a pastor himself. But he is the director of the Bible College that formally extended the invitation for me to come. So Sergey wanting me to be there was all fine and dandy, but it was these men that that finally approved the trip and authorized me to come and invited me to come. And there was several phone calls and emails and back and forth. They wanted to learn, who I was, what my doctrine was like. They listened to some of the classes off the website and realized that I was dispensational and premillennial and not a Calvinist and not into replacement theology and things like that. So once I was vetted and met their criteria, then they were happy to have me. And I was very blessed. I was very blessed to meet them. And I feel like I've known them for years and years, even though I just met them last month. And I'm looking forward to going back. That's my biggest prayer, is that if they will have me back, that we'll decide what kind of schedule to keep and what kind of interval. I explained to them that I don't take a mission trip every year, and I really haven't had one for 7 years now. But when I went to Ukraine, I would go every other year instead of every single year. So we'll see if that works out. We'll see what they're doing. And I'll say more about the school here shortly. They're still really putting the school together. And because when they first launched the school, they had a lot of plans, they had a lot of ideas, and then COVID hit. So their timing was amazing for starting the school. So they kind of survived that, and now they're up and running again. And it's just a neat thing. I'll share some things about that here in a moment. The trip, by the way, before I show that, let me just put a map up here. I like maps. In case you're not familiar, Portugal is not in Texas. So my first flight crossed the Atlantic from Austin to Amsterdam, actually. It's great. This just started a couple years ago. It's not that long. KLM started a direct Austin to Amsterdam flight. Also, British Airlines started a direct Austin to London flight. So, and I think Lufthansa has a direct Austin to Frankfurt flight. So Austin is getting more and more European flights. My first leg was to the Netherlands, landed in Amsterdam, and then the second flight was here to Portugal. Portugal's always been an interesting country to me ever since I was a child. I would stare at a map and I would stare at this peninsula here, and most of the peninsula is Spain, except for the little corner there, which is Portugal. And I always wonder, why didn't Spain just take over Portugal? Why not just have one country there? And so I asked him that while I was there. Found out that there were several attempts, several wars, different things. And for a time, they actually were united in a joint kingdom that didn't last terribly long. And then they split apart again. Mainly it's because the Portuguese people speak Portuguese and live in Portugal, and the Spanish people speak Spanish and live in Spain. And so they have this river between them and a border and so forth. Anyway, I learned a lot while I was there. The region where I was on the very south part here, and in fact, if you can call it the Faro region, you'll see what I'm talking about. Faro is a city, but Faro is also a district, and essentially it makes up the whole southern coast. And it really is geographically different from the rest of Portugal, because you've got a mountain range there that, I call it a mountain range. You got some, I'll put the topography on there. So you can see the hills. Oh, I'd call them hills rather than mountains. But it does. It sets it apart. The weather patterns are different. The culture is different. It's like a Mediterranean beach resort part of the country. And so that's where I spent the bulk of my time. So 9 hours and 20 minutes on a KLM flight. You take off on Thursday evening at 6:05. You get to Amsterdam on Friday morning at 10:25, and that's kind of nice. I like the overnight flight. I like sleeping as much as I can and waking up and convincing myself, hey, it's a brand new day, and I had plenty of sleep. I'm in great shape. And just tell yourself that enough, and you can fake it for a little bit. 7 hours in the Amsterdam airport, including an immigration process, which I had never gone through before. It's such an international hub. I'm used to landing there and then moving on to Kiev or moving on to Africa or moving on to other places. And I didn't realize that by landing there and staying in Europe, my next connection to Portugal meant that I was entering into what they call the Schengen area, which means I have to go through customs and passport control and things like that. So anyway, that was interesting. And once I figured that out, it was pretty simple after that. And then 3-hour and 5-minute flight to Faro in Portugal's Algarve region. Um, First time ever experience on something called Transavia Airline. And Transavia does not get my recommendation I mean, it's nice, it's very economical, it's very cheap, but it is a subdivision of KLM Airlines that's designed to be as budget as they can get. So I think it was, and I didn't even realize that the Coke Zero was not complimentary either. They ended up charging me €3 for the Coke Zero, and I said, okay, this is the budget airline. It was cute. The seats were all green. The stewardesses were wearing these green outfits and whatever. But anyway, 23 hours door to door. By the time I landed, Sergey and Pastor Mark were there to meet me, and I made it. And I'm glad that I got there early. The whole point was by leaving on Thursday, getting there on Friday, got there in the evening, had dinner, and then went to bed. But that gave me a day. A Saturday was basically a recovery day. It was a day to adjust to the time zone. It was a day to walk around the campus, to learn the lay of the land, to meet people, things like that, to get an idea for the church. I did attend the church that first Sunday, and it's really an interesting church. The auditorium was unlike anything I'd ever seen before. It's basically built into a hillside, and it's a sunken amphitheater type seating, really. And so the podium, the stage, is at the very bottom of the room, and then all the seats go up in tiers in front of you, up 10 rows up or more, a dozen rows. I didn't count them, but everybody you're preaching to is above you. It's like the opposite of here, where you're sitting on the floor and I'm up on a platform, and I don't know, looking down. I'm not like I'm looking down on people, but looking up was a new experience for me, and I thought that was interesting. But it is an international church. The Algarve region is a resort region. It's also a retirement region. People from all over the world retire there, mostly Europeans, but some Americans. And so I didn't hear a whole lot of Portuguese. I heard more English than Portuguese. I met more Irish people than Portuguese people while I was there, and that was interesting. But for years and years, they would have an international service conducted in English, and that's Pastor Mark's domain. Even though he's fluent in Portuguese, he was a missionary kid as a child in Brazil. So he learned Portuguese from his childhood. And he can preach in Portuguese, and he can cover for the Portuguese services as needed. But in the morning, they have the international service in English, and that's the one I preached at. And then in the afternoon, they have the Portuguese service. Pastor Barry covers that. He's a neat guy, too. He also is Irish. So Mark is Irish, Barry is Irish, Glenn is Irish, and interesting. So they all spoke English, of course, with the cutest accents you've ever heard in their Irish accents. But Barry can also cover the English services as needed, but he's mainly the Portuguese pastor. But then just in the last 5 years, they have now added the Russian services, or what they call the Slavic services, because there really is an assortment of not just Ukrainians and some Russians and Latvians and one from Estonia and some others, and one from Uzbekistan. And so, but the thing they all have in common essentially is the former Soviet Union and the Russian language. So Pastor Sergey teaches that on Wednesday nights, and does real well with it. I got to attend a couple of those, and just a blessing to see the group that gathers and the studies that they do, and to see Sergey in action and to see all these things is indeed amazing. So they started this up, and it looks like this is something they're going to keep long term. So keep that in your prayers. And if Sergey is going to stay there long term, then they've asked for prayer on that regard. How do they keep this position funded? How can we be of help in that funding if we can support Sergey on a missionary basis? Something I'm going to be addressing with my deacons this afternoon, and some other things there. So anyway, it was a neat facility, and I enjoyed it very much. It's in, this is the campus here, which I'll show you in a moment. Let me go back to the map. It's in this region here which I should be able to find. And one of the valleys, so Lule is the nearest town, and then there's a valley here called Valle Judeo, Valley of the Jews. And going back to when in the Inquisition, Spain kicked all the Jews out of Spain, a lot of the refugee Jews settled here. And then, of course, there was a time that Portugal kicked all the Jews out of Portugal. So it's no longer the Valley of the Jews. They still call it that. But it's, I didn't meet any Jewish people while I was there. But this is where the church is located. This campus is pretty neat, and I'm glad that I had the extra data, kind of walk around and learn the things. The church main chapel that has the sunken amphitheater is this square building right here, and then the Bible college is this building that's connected to it, just going there to the north. And you'll see more pictures. There's a great facility for the students, for the campus, and they have the one primary classroom. They have a recreation room, and then that's on the upstairs. And then downstairs in the basement, they have dormitory space. So they have bedrooms, they have showers, they have all that they need down there. The men and women are housed separately in the basement of the college. So that was nice. Then got some housing here where the pastors live, and the guest quarters there where I stayed. They called it the chalet, which is cute as anything. I liked it. And then up at the top of the hill, you got this recreation area up here under a tent cover, and then the kitchen. And one of the first places they showed me was the kitchen, which I was thankful for. And but the neat thing is, this is a large commercial kitchen facility with a huge table that seats 12 people, and all of the students in the Bible college, that's where they take their meals. And that's where they prepare the meals. And they've got a roster for who's doing the cooking today, who's doing the cleanup today, who's doing all their chores are laid out. And in fact, actually, one of the first classes they get at the beginning of the term, they get a cooking class, and they learn how to cook for one another, and they do a great job. It's just a blessing. So I think one of the highlights for me was taking all my meals up there. I had breakfast on my own, but lunch and dinner with the students was pretty special, and answering their questions and talking the Bible and just all kinds of things was. There's a lot of ministry that happens in that kitchen building up top there. I was very thankful for that. The trip, as I say, turned out to be more of a reunion than I thought. I knew I was going to see Sergey, and obviously I was going to see Olya. I didn't realize I was going to see 2 other former students. There were a total of 4 Ukrainian graduates that are now living in the Algarve, that are now a part of this church. Sergey is the picture on the top right. I met him in 2015, and he is right here in the middle, kind of hiding. Can I zoom in on that? Probably. There used to be a way to magnify the slide. There we go. Yeah. So there's Sergey right there in the middle. And some of these other students are interesting too, because this girl ended up being married to somebody you'll see on the next slide. And they're currently living in Germany, but they're considering a relocation to Ukraine. To Portugal, that they may join with the other 4 that are here in Portugal and take part in the church ministry that's there. And then this bottom picture, again, if I zoom in here, this was 2 years later. This was in 2017 when I was teaching in Ukraine. And this guy is the husband of that girl I showed you in the other picture. And then Olya here is Sergey's wife. They weren't married at the time this photo was taken, or maybe they just barely got married before this photo was taken. And then her best friend here, Irina and Sasha, or Alexander, they were married before they started school. And I was surprised to see them in Portugal. I didn't realize that they were there. But they were there, and it was a blessing to spend time with them as well. Also, my translator here, he was not in Portugal, but I did meet a pastor there who knew him from Belarus. And so the tight circles that, it's a small world, and in doctrinal circles, it's even smaller, that when you encounter a believer that is solid on his doctrine, you don't forget those kind of guys. And when I'm thinking about it, this is another husband and wife tandem. They're from Lviv in the west of Ukraine, and he was drafted into the army. And last I heard, he's still serving in the Ukrainian army. So I'm praying for him as this war goes on. So this really did form a reunion, and we got to have a meal together. Sergey took the selfie, and then Olya was sitting here with their daughter. Milana is her name. She's 8 years old. And the baby boy that was born just 2 days after this photo was taken. So Olya is still pregnant at this time, but the little baby boy was born here in a couple more days. And then across the table is Sasha and Irina, the other former students. So it really forms an amazing group, and this is the core of the whole Slavic church endeavors. I think they maybe have 30 to 40 people attending the Russian services, the Russian language services in their church, and Sergey is the lead pastor, and Sasha is serving as a deacon, and all four of them are active in the ministry in different ways. So pretty neat. And then there's the baby photo with little Silwan, Siluan. Silwan is the name. And if you have a Ukrainian Bible, you can open it up. If you don't have a Ukrainian Bible, whatever Bible you have, you open it up to 1 Thessalonians 1:1, and you'll read, Paul, Silvanus, and Timothy to the church at Thessalonica. And Paul, Silvanus, and Timothy, that second name, Silvanus, in Latin or English, Silvanus, Silvanus. Anyway, this is the Ukrainian spelling for Silvanus. It's Silwan. And he's just a cute little guy, 7 pounds something at his birth. And his big sister is now thrilled as anything that she has a real live, breathing baby brother that she can play with like a doll, and change his diapers and help him put clothes on him and things like that. So big sister is very happy. All right. So after the Saturday of adjusting to the time schedule, and then after the Sunday of church, Monday morning it was time to start school. So this picture was taken from the podium where I taught the whole week, and this is the left side of the room. I had about a dozen students, but they weren't always the same from day to day. There were some that came and some that left, and some that one of them had a visa problem, and so he had to actually remove from the school and go to work. If he didn't have gainful employment, then they were going to revoke his visa and expel him from the country. So it's which I understand. Nation states have the right to do that. That if when they issue the visa, they've got requirements for holding a visa, and you got to meet those requirements. So anyway, that student's hoping to get back to school at some point. But and then there were a couple of others that weren't feeling well. One went home to Romania because she was feeling sick, and other things there. But anyway, so this was about half the class, and let me think. There's the two young men there were from Brazil, and the two ladies in the front were from Ireland, Northern Ireland, and the girl in the back was from Romania. This guy here was auditing the class. He's not enrolled in the he's not a college student. He's older than me. He's been a pastor for 30 years in Switzerland and in Germany and other places, and now he's retired, and just wanted to take a class in the book of Daniel, and I enjoyed meeting him very much. There's the other half of the class. That girl really was wearing a Texas Longhorn sweatshirt. I thanked her for making me feel welcome, making me feel at home. She's never been to Texas. She and her sister behind her are Filipino, and then by way of Canada, ended up in Portugal. So anyway, interesting story there. And then another girl there from the Netherlands, and this guy here I think is also from Brazil. If not, he could be the one Portuguese student that I had in the class. So this was the Bible College, and this is just amazing. Like I say, they're getting started. They're forming their curriculum. Please keep them in prayer. My module on Daniel was the first module that they had of any Old Testament prophet. They really want to add more. They want to have a more comprehensive biblical program as they put this together. They're designing it right now to be either a 1-year or 2-year program, depending on what the student is headed towards. Really as a gap year in between high school and college, with a lot of young people that are trying to figure out what they're going to do. They don't know what they want to do. They don't know what the Lord wants them to do. And I say, yeah, that's kind of common in my country too. I think it's pretty common all over the world. So they give them a year or two to figure things out, to get some teaching, to grow up, to find some realms of service, and I think it's great. I think it's absolutely very worthwhile and a neat program for them. Some of these kids are going to go on to more formal theological training. Others are going to go to other ministry pursuits. They're going to teach Sunday school. They're going to do other things. So it's a neat program on that basis. I did get to meet the professor that was there before me. Was a Dallas Seminary graduate, and she was from Minnesota, I think, and I forget right now what it was she taught. She taught a week on something. And then the instructor that came after me was teaching on the Sermon on the Mount from Matthew 5, 6, and 7. So they're getting an assortment of Bible-related topics, and just pray for their wisdom as they really want to do something comprehensive. They really want to pattern, I think, things similar to how it was in Ukraine. And I think having Sergei there is going to be huge for them, because they're going to be able to take the example of the Ukrainian operations and really put a curriculum in place there. Also, there's a chance that they can get Jim Myers to come and visit with them there as well, and that would be the best. Get him on the ground there to help with their program development. This was the front of the room. So that glass pulpit, I've never stood behind a glass, I guess it was plexiglass or plastic or something, but it was see-through, which I'm not. I like wood. I like hiding behind. You can't see my knees knocking, or you can't see how nervous I am. The glass pulpit, there's no hiding behind the glass pulpit. But the technology was amazing, and it didn't matter. They had some kind of internet set up where once they put my password in, I had Wi-Fi everywhere. And it didn't matter if I was in the college, I was in the church, I was in the coffee shop, I was in the kitchen, or I was in the chalet. If I was anywhere on the entire campus, then I was connected on their Wi-Fi network. And you could see little booster routers and other things, and different places. So the technology was neat. And if I zoom in on this smart board, I don't know how expensive this is, but this was a lot of fun. Because you could just use your finger, you tapped on it, you drew whatever, and I could draw the Nebuchadnezzar statue from Daniel chapter 2, changing colors for the head of gold, the chest of silver, the belly and thighs of bronze, the legs of iron. And and draw the 4 little beasts from Daniel chapter 7, or the 2 beasts from Daniel chapter 8. The stone, of course, without hands, comes crashing down out of heaven and lands on the feet there. And what's really, you can save these, you can export them, you can do a number of things with them. You can focus in on the issue here on the throne of David, the program. If you've never studied the book of Daniel, by the way, the whole point is to encourage the Jewish people that even though the city has been destroyed, the temple is gone, and the throne of David is now vacated, God still has a plan. And the Jewish people have a future. And the kingdom will return. And the king will return. And there will be a son of David seated on the throne of David, and that's the whole point to this statue. And so starting with Babylon, going through Persia, Greece, and Rome, there's no son of David on the throne of David until the stone made without hands comes from heaven, crashes to the earth, smashes the toes, the whole statue collapses, and then that stone grows to become a mountain, grows to become a kingdom. We have the kingdom of God on earth with Jesus Christ seated on the throne. So really the whole message here is about the time in between when Zedekiah is removed and when Jesus is enthroned. And God has absolute sovereignty for all that he does, and that's why I like the book of Daniel. Anyway, it's a fun thing. Not only can you draw on it like that, but then you can switch over and it can display your laptop. And so most of the time I had Logos up on the screen. I was reading through verses and it was showing different things with the Logos software. And then other times I would switch over and do the drawing, such as we see there. Now, let's see if I back up a little bit, you'll see, if you can see these this glass wall behind the students. And it's a folding wall. It's got some doors. You can either remove it entirely or you can just open the doors and walk between the rooms. That then takes you to this room. So now we're out here in the recreation room, or whatever they call it. This is where they gather for their morning devotions. This is where they gather for their evening fellowships. You can see the classroom through the glass walls there. This is where they have their prayer times. They have their other engagements. This is also in the evening time, by the way, where they asked me if I would teach them how to play Scrabble. And so we had 2 game nights on, I think it was a Wednesday and a Thursday night, and we played some Scrabble. One of the students found a used copy of the English Scrabble game and brought it in, and so we had some Scrabble nights there. The youngest of these students was 18. They were all either 18, 19, or 20. The youngest was 18, the oldest was 20. There were a couple of sister pairs, and anyway, just a fun group of kids. And I was blessed to meet them and blessed to teach them. And now we're Facebook friends with several of them, and we'll stay in touch in the coming years and see what the Lord ends up doing with them in different ways. And like I say, this campus is interesting. I think just walking around, they've got some prayer opportunities for expansion. This property over across the road to the west may become available, and as soon as it clears probate, the man that owned it has passed away. His son and daughter are inheriting it, but intend to sell it as soon as they are legally listed as the owners. So there's prayers there that the church may want to expand that way, because they do need more parking. They would prefer to have this land up north where they don't have to cross the road, and they can expand parking that way. And the main entrance is actually down here off the main road, where they have a limited parking lot, and then a beautiful walk through a prayer garden. They call it their scripture garden, and with pools and fountains and plants and things. When Sergei first arrived, he was working there as a gardener and using his gardening skills for some income. And it was while he was gardening that Pastor Mark and Pastor Glenn found out that he was actually a pastor with solid dispensational theology. They couldn't believe that their gardener was pre-trib, premillennial, dispensational in all these things. So yeah, that's the main entrance is down here off of this road, and then it's kind of a back entrance up here off of this road with another small parking area up there. It was kind of fun. They gave me a little car to drive around for the evenings and weekends and things, and I I was shocked because I sat in it and I started it up, or before I started it up, I realized, wait a minute, this is a stick shift. And it's not going to start until I make sure it's in gear and I hit the clutch. And then I thought, when is the last time I drove a stick shift? And I texted Sharon, we think it was 1999. We think it was before I bought my Mustang. So it's been a while. And the Lord was hilarious because he allowed me to start on the top of the hill instead of the bottom of the hill. And anyway, it came back. The worst part of driving was trying to I was thinking too much, right? Just stop thinking and just do it, So I stopped thinking about it and just let the muscle memory kind of come out, and I managed to to get where I was going and come back, and even park it back again at the top of the hill, and so forth. Anyway, it's a neat campus, and thankful for the whole church. Originally this trip was planned when Sergey first invited me. The trip was planned to spend a week with the campus and then to spend a week on vacation, to spend a week sightseeing. And Sergey and Olya were going to take Sharon and I all over and see all kinds of things. And then, life happens, things happen. Sharon did not end up going with her health concerns. And then Olya ended up having a baby, so that limited her travels. We did do some, and so I am thankful for that. On Monday, I took a train from Faro here. There's a train that runs from Faro to Lisbon. So I did take a train into Lisbon, had a chance to walk around Lisbon. Lisbon is famous. They're a city of 7 hills, and I think I walked up every single one of them. My watch fitness app was telling me, "Good job, you're doing great." And it rarely tells me that. But on that particular Monday, after I passed 5,000 steps and 7,000 steps and 9,000 steps, it was a day with a lot of walking and a lot of hills, a lot of steps. It also tracked the elevation changes up and down. It said that I covered 45 floors, 45 stories of elevation up and down. And I believe it because there was a lot of stairs up and down. And the biggest feature was the castle of St. George's Castle there, and it's on the highest hill in town. And when you finally make it to the top of the hill, and you think, okay, and you're exhausted because it's a steep hill, and you get up there, and you think, okay, I'm going to tour this castle. Well, you're not done with the steps because the castle is full of steps, and there are towers to go up and walls to go up, and just there's more steps than you can shake a stick at. So Lisbon was fun. Lisbon has a huge Jesus statue too, which, did I take a picture of Lisbon? Okay, yeah, this is Lisbon. I'm standing on the wall of the castle looking out over the city, which is just way down there, and this big river here and the bridge that goes across. It's blurry, but that's the largest Jesus statue outside of Brazil. Right, so you got Rio de Janeiro has the famous Jesus statue on this is not as big as that one, but it's still pretty decent, and got his arm stretched out. You can see Jesus looking over your city. So that was a fun tour. I think I got lost several times. Google Maps was useless. I drained my battery trying to use GPS all day long. And then I realized I wasn't going to have battery left to text when I came back on the train. So anyway, there was electricity on the train, so that helped. But the GPS was useless. You're looking at the map, then you're looking at the streets around you, and there was no similarity at all. And the names of the streets on the map did not match the names of the streets on the signs. They all had different names, and they were all twisty anyway, so GPS was useless. But I do recommend Lisbon. A lot of the castle was great. The museums were fun. Just the architecture, the cobblestone streets, the little narrow streets you go through were interesting. There were statues. I took a lot of pictures of statues. I did not put them in the slideshow. Some of the statues were naked women. I said, I can't show pictures of that. So, but it was a fun tour. And they had a Hard Rock Cafe, and that's where I got my lunch. I decided to reward myself. I'd had plenty of the local cuisine. By the way, these little tarts that they have, these egg tarts, the de nata, they're called pastel de nata. If you've never been exposed to a pastel de nata, once you have your first one, you're going to have 100 more because these things are amazing. And I tell you, I don't know why I never knew about them before. Anyway, so this was Lisbon. What else did I see in Lisbon? A lot. They have a good metro network, and I think I rode most of those. All right, let me get past that. Then the second day, well, I had a recovery day. So Monday was Lisbon. Tuesday was recovering from all that walking. Wednesday, then we went to Lagos. So we came over here to this corner. And again, I'll bring up the map so you can see it. They call this the end of the world because this little point down here really is the end of the world. So it's kind of the corner of Portugal, it's the corner of Europe, it's the corner of the continent, and it is the most amazing little feature. And so there's two, don't do that. There's 2 points. This one has a lighthouse and a small little fortress. This one has a monster fortress, and we toured both of them. But this little point out here was amazing. I went out here with Sergey was not able to take me. Sergey had a baby appointment with Olya, so a different Ukrainian pastor took me, a pastor named Gleb, Pastor Gleb. And now we're best of friends because Gleb, we're real close in age, and we really hit it off. So Pastor Gleb took me here to this place they call the end of the world. And you get here, and they've got these kilometer marker signs, because this is where every walk starts, this is where every bicycle trip starts. This is kilometer 0 for all of your trips across Portugal. But what's neat is you can stand on this place here. You park in the parking lot, and you come up to this fortress, which was closed. You know, when you travel in February, it's not exactly tourist season, and a lot of the places were not open. But walking over here to this beach, not really a beach, you're on a cliff 200 feet over the ocean, watching the waves crashing in, and then walking over here to this cliff and looking down, and it was amazing. It's the same ocean. It's the same ocean, but here you're looking west towards America, and the waves are just hammering and hammering and hammering, pretty violent. And then you walk over here, and you're looking south towards Africa, and they're soft, little floating waves. It's like they came around the little point here, just got tired. And so they just kind of got chill and mellow and floated on in. Then over here, they got angry again. But it was an amazing point. So they call this the end of the world. And their most famous place is here where they sell, not fish and chips, bratwurst. The Let's See bratwurst, supposedly the best bratwurst outside of Germany. But they were closed, so I couldn't eat there either. This other fortress was much larger, fortifications and different things here was interesting. They have these sinkholes where the waves that come crashing in go underground, and then they come up through these sinkholes. And so you can hear the waves. The waves sound like thunder, but they're not thunder. They're just the waves coming through the caves underneath your feet. And then about every third or fourth, maybe every fifth wave, one would be strong enough to actually splash the water up and get you wet as you're looking through those particular sinkholes. So yeah, that was my day on Wednesday. We also went to Lagos, the city there. It's the second largest city in the Faro district after Faro. Lagos had a historical slave market where the Portuguese imported African slaves, and they all passed through Lagos there, and they had a museum, and there were tours of the fortifications, and so that was pretty interesting. I kind of lost some of those details though because I was building up so much of a friendship with Pastor Gleb. Gleb, I think 4 years younger than me, but close enough. He was old enough to remember the Soviet Union. He was old enough to remember when communism ended. He told me the stories of how he first learned as an 11-year-old how capitalism was amazing and communism was horrible, and it changed his life really and got him in trouble with some of his teachers because of this book that he had read. And anyway, Gleb's a neat guy. He's a father of 8. And he's now a Portuguese citizen. Now he has a Portuguese passport and Portuguese citizenship now, as he ministers there in the Algarve region. Then I'm going to run out of time here. My last sightseeing was in Seville. So we drove from Faro over here to Seville, about a 2.5 hour drive, I guess. Made it to Seville. Spent a full day walking there. I actually had more steps in Seville than I had in Lisbon, but at least it wasn't all up and down hill. It was relatively flat. Seville at one point was a used to be a river port. The river has silted up, and there's no longer ocean vessels can't get to Seville anymore. But at the time of the Spanish colonies, from the 1500s all the way through 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, when Spain was colonizing the Western Hemisphere, all of the gold, all of the silver, all of the wealth from the Western Hemisphere came through Seville, and they brought them back. In fact, I took a picture of. They had a replica of Magellan's ship that was docked there at the dock of Seville, and it was interesting to look at because it was so small in that. And then down south of there on the coast of Cadiz, Cadiz is supposedly biblical Tarshish, where Jonah wanted to flee to when he was going to get as far away from Nineveh as he possibly could. The Spanish believed that Cadiz was the location of Tarshish. So there I am in Lisbon. These are the angry waves crashing in at the end of the world near Lagos. And then actually, I got some other pictures. They were fishing. You had fishermen standing on the top of these cliffs, and I couldn't believe it. I said, how in the world can you fish when you're 200 feet above the ocean and these waves are crashing in? Are you really catching anything? And they did. I saw them catch a fish. And I thought, how in the world? And if it was me, I mean, I'd get pulled off the cliff, I think. A wave would hit my bait and off I would go. But they're standing on the edge of the cliff and then fishing and pulling these fish out, which means they have to get them out of the water and then reel them up 200 feet of air to get the fish up to the top of the cliff. It was crazy. Here's Seville, and here's the ship. The Nao Victoria is what it's called. Magellan set out with 5 ships, and either 1 or 2 made it back. Magellan himself didn't make it back. Magellan was killed in Manila, in the Philippines. But at least this one ship, and maybe a second one, returned to Seville with all the maps and all the charts and all the exploration that they had done. The first ship ever to circumnavigate the globe, to travel around the world. And so it was kind of fun to stand there on the dock. There was also a bullfighting ring that was closed, but I took pictures from the outside. There was a huge, huge cathedral. Probably the most famous building in all of Seville is the Seville Cathedral. And it had a line that stretched for miles and miles and miles. The tickets were sold out. There were thousands of people in line to make the pilgrimage into that cathedral. I told Sergey it's like the line of people trying to get into Austin Bible Church. He laughed. Of course, he knew better because he'd been here before. He visited. Now, if you turn it into a tourist attraction and a museum and you can sell tickets and people will line up. If you're teaching doctrine, then people aren't interested in that and you'll have a much shorter line. And then the return flight back. Did I take a picture? I did not. Okay. The return flight back was basically the reverse order, except flying out of Faro at 8 p.m., landing in Amsterdam at midnight, and landing in Amsterdam at midnight when the connecting flight wasn't until noon the following day. And I thought, man, that's 12 hours, nearly 12 hours in an airport terminal. But here's the neatest thing. They have 2 hotels in the terminal. These little micro hotels, these little capsule rooms, just as cute as anything. I thought it was in a submarine or something. I'm in this little capsule hotel room. And you're still in the secure perimeter of the terminal, right? So your checked bag is still a checked bag. All you got is your carry-on. And you go into this little room, and it had a bed and a sink and a shower and a toilet. And it was just a tiny little thing, smaller than the platform I'm standing on, about half the size of this platform, tiny little thing. And anyway, got 5 hours of sleep and said, okay, I'm ready now for my connecting flight, and worked out pretty well. So I do recommend that. Took off at noon, got here at 6 p.m. And all in all, it was 30 hours door to door for the return trip coming back. So now the question is, as I pray over this, and I ask you to pray over this, is, and as the people in Portugal pray over this, are they going to invite me back? I think they will. And on what kind of schedule can I go back? Is the Lord opening this? Because I don't see Ukraine opening up again anytime soon. Even if the war ends tomorrow, I don't know that they can get that school started up again. So, assuming that the Ukrainian commitment is over now, then perhaps this college would be a good alternative. So pray for that. I do like their structure. I like their setup. I think it's worthwhile, and I'm curious to see how they grow with it. I'm curious to see how. I go back to the beginning here and show you praying for these guys. There they are, Mark and Judith, and then Glenn. Glenn's never married. Glenn's a single guy, and he's really the director of this school. He's my age, and like I said, Dallas Seminary graduate, and just solid on his doctrine, and the funniest guy you've ever met. I've decided that the Northern Ireland, the Irish are hilarious, and Glenn especially. He's a prince among his people there. So pray for these guys, and as they adjust their curriculum, as the Lord shows them what they want this school to turn into, pray that these faithful servants will stay faithful in that regard. Okay. We need to go to communion, but do we have any questions? Anything at all before I wrap this up? Yes, sir. It was not the original. The original sank. The original, after the journey, actually sailed for another 80 years or some. It traveled the world for many, many more years after that, but it did finally sink. It was lost at sea. But, yes, that was a reconstruction of the Victoria. And that one has gone all over the world too. Yes, ma'am. Did I get to see? No, I did not get to see Gibraltar. We thought about it. We talked about possibly going to Cadiz, possibly going to Gibraltar. I kind of wanted to see, because Alethea has been to Gibraltar, and I've got a photo of her with a monkey on her head. I was thinking, hey, I could get a picture of me with a monkey on my head, and then we didn't make it to Gibraltar. Yeah. Yes. Okay, so ITLC, I think it's called International Theological Learning Center, is the name of the Bible College, ITLC, and is connected to the IE, the International Evangelical Church of the Algarve. And so you can find both of them on the website. You can find web pages with information about both the church and the college. Algarve, Algarve. The Algarve is that southern region of Portugal. Yeah. So in fact, I made a bookmark in Google Maps. I just call it Sergi. And it's not saved. So much for my bookmark. Because I was going to show you the website and show you the. Oh well. Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for the trip that you supported. I do pray for this church. I pray for this school. They really are settling in long term. They would love to keep Sergey on staff long term, and there's fundraising needs there, and then this college has fundraising needs. So be faithful, Father. I believe your hand is in it. I believe you are blessing this, and as you have started this, you will complete it. You've got a plan and a purpose, and you will provide. So I thank you for that. I thank you for each of the students. I thank you for the time that we had together. I thank you for the little exit interview they did and the interview they made and all these things, Father. Just give you the praise and the glory. I thank you for the birth of little Silvan, and pray for him, for his salvation when he's old enough to understand the gospel. And I thank you and I praise you, Father, in Christ's name. Amen. All right.
Austin Bible Church is a grace
switch
ministry.
over now and
No
go to the
price
Lord.
is ever assigned to any video, audio, printed material, or anything provided by this ministry. Costs associated with such grace provision are paid in full by grace-oriented born-again believers in Jesus Christ, motivated by God the Holy Spirit, well-pleasing to God the Father. More information on our grace-giving policy and your opportunity to join in this grace financial fellowship can be found at the link in the description below.